I'm here with Heather to au-Skipworth, who is a candidate in the Hastings District Council's Takatimu Māori Ward by-election. Kia ora, Heather, and thanks for joining me.
Kia ora. Thanks for the invite.
Great to see you again, Heather. Just you've been around sort of on the fringes of politics and stood for some seats and that at national level and I think at local level as well. What has made you decide to put your hat in the ring this time?
Well, I was only ever on a political pause. I was never stepping out of politics altogether. And I think the fire in my belly came from what I believe is a current assault on our whakapapa in terms of tangata whenua and the obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi for this coalition government. So it kind of helped to spark me back into it. But I continued to stay involved in local politics even when I took a pause, so pretty much that's not the only thing, but that was the catalyst for making me jump back in.
So now you've mentioned that the actions of the new coalition government, how are you going to translate your opposition to that at a local level and sitting around a council table?
I don't know whether, so this is only an assumption, whether the current council have ever explored the beauty that lies within Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So we have an obligation, but how much do we actually implement and acknowledge Te Tiriti o Waitangi in their council operations in terms of councillors' mahi, but also in the day-to-day operations of council. So for me, it's in the first instance asking how we implement or enact our obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi first before assuming what they are or aren't doing.
And what are some of the other issues that you stand in terms of, to get things done at local council level?
Well, I think the biggest issue is education. A lot of our whānau think that council is about rates and rubbish, and those that aren't ratepayers, I'm not sure that they're aware that the council is there to serve them as well. Because the current, when there's some talk out there at the moment talking about ratepayers, don't want this and ratepayers don't want that. Well, actually, the council is there to provide services for the community as a whole, not just ratepayers. So
that's interesting that you say that you representing the people that don't pay rates. Apart from education, what are some of the other things that these people need representation on?
Well, just a clarification is I don't just represent those who don't pay rates. But, so an example would be the roof over at the Camberley Park, the latest structure that the council and many other contributors. I went along to a Camberley community meeting. They were frustrated with the council, not feeling like they weren't heard. So I worked with them on the detail of the submission, how a submission works, what could be the possible outcome. In 2 years, and then how, when they go to present at the council chambers, 2 years later, they had this roof over that they had been dreaming about for a few years. So it's teaching our people how to become submission writers, using their fire or their aspirations to get to an end point, not just, I hope someone will help us or something like that. It's more about ensuring that our people are well-equipped, well-versed in those areas.
Now, the ratepayers themselves, you say you're going to represent them as well. How will you represent them? What are the issues that are important to ratepayers?
I think it's similar. So some of those at the Camberley community, they were ratepayers as well. So I'm not quite sure.
The people at Camberley, some of those people were ratepayers, yeah?
Yeah, so some of those people were actual ratepayers. So because we're ratepayers, we're not always educated as well. So I think it's exactly the same as educating or enhancing people to know that their voice can make a difference, just like the Kimberley community did. It may seem like a small thing, but like Flexme, I suppose the supermarket was a hub. This Kimberley Park is also a hub for the Kimberley community.
Now, Hastings District Council's debt is sitting at 400 million, and they're paying 16 million per year on interest payments alone. What will you do as a council to try and reduce debt, and also to make sure that the annual rates increases aren't that high?
Yeah, it's a juggle, Andrew. I think for me, I'd like to get in and get into the detail of it. So without knowing what the finer detail is, it's really hard to say what I can and can't do. I think, unfortunately, it is inevitable that there needs to be rate rises. That's kind of common across a lot of the councils. We are also a flood-struck region, which is, very unfortunate for us. If you look at the, without delving too much into the detail, the scenario with those that, the recent conversation around whether the council should help those, I'm trying to think, the ones in Puketapu, who were hoping the council could top up what they needed to demolish their homes.
Yes, the category 3 people.
Yeah, that was quite a hard task. But in saying that, if the government's not fronting up, it's left to local government. So there's a lot of things up in the air, a lot of considerations, I'd say. But as an elected councillor, if I do get to the table, I think we just need to be transparent that rate rises are probably inevitable because of the cyclone, but also there's a lot that needs to be done, and the government aren't coming to the party to support as much as they could.
Now, you've got quite a sort of grassroots support base, because you are the founder of what I can only call a phenomenon, which was Iron Maori. How do you think that's going to help you? Because there is name recognition and that. Do you think those people are going to vote for you?
Absolutely. So I'm not just facial recognition. I'm grassroots, as you said, but I'm a hard worker, and many people know that. And even though I took a political pause, people were still coming to me for advocacy. And I always think we shouldn't be called politicians. We should be called advocates, because then that reminds us that we're there to do a job for our people, not the fantasy-styled word of politician where all of a sudden you transform into something different. So I know I've got a great photo base. People tell me, stop me, messages, and I know I'll win this seat. Humbly, I know I will win this seat.
We're up against Jason Whaitiri, which I think you might even be related to him, because he's
absolutely
Mika Whaitiri's brother. But also you're up against Michael Nahuka, Destiny Church pastor, who's been quite controversial, some might say, in his stance against especially the drag queen story time sessions that were going to be held at the Hastings Library. Do you think it was right that the council cancelled those in the face of opposition?
I think none of us know the extent of pressure that the council were getting in terms of those who didn't agree with it. The emails, well, we all saw part of a leaked email, but I suppose if I look at why they did it, their reasoning was to keep the community safe, that, the protests may get out of hand. I think one lesson they could have learned would have been to talk to the rainbow community themselves first. We still continued with what we called a peace action. Destiny Church members were there, and actually we invited them over for a sausage sizzle, and they came over and we integrated. So I think sometimes without talking to those that it affects, they can take on a persona of
Now, you have been on the district health board before when it was operating. So you're used to that sort of procedural stuff. There's a lot of bureaucracy in council. How are you going to cut through that?
I think ensuring that I always have whānau voice at the forefront, as well as our obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Now, bureaucracy only happens if people aren't working for the communities that we serve. Yeah. Being very clear why we're always there, and often a reminder doesn't go unnoticed. So bureaucracy does happen. It's knowing the difference. As you say, I've got lots of experience around board, but it's knowing the difference between governance and operations, but ensuring that if there's whānau voice that need some help in operations, it's ensuring that it drops down to the right people to deal with it and that governors don't become operators.
Last question. Why should people, the voters of the Takitimu ward of Hastings District Council, vote for you?
Well, first and foremost, I'm from Ngāti Kakanganui. No Ngāti Kakanganui ahau, ki te pakipakitanga o Hine te Moa. I'm a very hard worker. Everybody knows this. The phenomenon of I'm Māori didn't happen just because people sat around twiddling their thumbs. I'm a whānau engagement. I'm a kanohi kitia. So I'm at most of the kaupapa that I can get to, but I've also learned the art of listening. We don't always have to have a say, but the art of listening is paramount when you're representing your communities.
That's au-Skipworth. Thank you so much for your time and all the best for the by-election.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for the opportunity.